All right, today we're going to dive deep into one of the oldest, most foundational institutions on earth, marriage. And we're going to look at it specifically through the lens of the Catholic Church. We'll explore its sacred roots, its core beliefs, and the really big question, how does a teaching this ancient hold up in our modern world?
And that's really the central question for us here. When a faith that's thousands of years old has such a specific, unchanging definition for marriage, how does it stand up in a world that's changing faster than ever? It's a fascinating tension. Okay, let's get into it.
So, what is the official definition? Well, Catholic teaching is incredibly clear on this. It sees marriage as a lifelong partnership, exclusively between one man and one woman. The belief is that God himself designed it this way, and for too many reasons. For the good of the couple themselves, and, crucially, to be open to creating new life. And for those who are baptized, well, it's not just a partnership, it's elevated to the level of a holy sacrament.
Now here's a distinction that is absolutely crucial to understanding this whole thing. The Church doesn't see marriage as a contract, but as a covenant. Think about it. A contract is a legal agreement, right? It's sealed by the state. A covenant, though, that's a whole different ballgame. It's seen as a sacred bond for your entire life, sealed by God himself. It's not just some human agreement, it's supposed to be a reflection of divine love.
So this covenant has two big purposes, and the key thing is they're seen as totally inseparable. First, you have the unitive good. This is all about two people becoming one, a complete communion of body, soul, and will. But then there's the procreative good, this idea of being open to new life, which is even called the crowning glory of married love. And according to this teaching, you just can't have one without the other. The moment you separate them, you're not really talking about the same thing anymore.
Okay, so all of this teaching really rests on two main pillars. Let's break down that first one, the teaching that marriage can only be between a man and a woman.
And this isn't just a random rule. It's anchored directly in Scripture, specifically in words attributed to Jesus Christ himself. This quote from the Gospel of Matthew is seen as a clear confirmation that the whole idea of marriage is rooted in God's original design for humanity, male and female.
So starting with that scriptural anchor, the theology kind of builds out from there. It begins with the order of creation, the idea that this is how God set things up from the very beginning. This ties into a concept called natural law. From there, you get this idea of complementarity, that the physical, spiritual, and emotional differences between men and women are actually designed to fit together, to create a unique kind of union. And all of that leads to the final point, that this specific union is, by its very nature, the kind that can create new life.
All right, on to the second pillar, and this one is just as critical as the first. The idea that the marriage bond is meant to be permanent. For life.
The word you'll hear over and over again is indissoluble. And what does that mean? Well, according to this teaching, once a Christian marriage is valid and consummated, no human power, not a government, not a court, nothing can dissolve it. The bond is understood to last until one of the spouses dies, period.
And again, just like the first pillar, this principle is grounded directly in the words of Jesus. This famous line from the Gospel of Mark is taken as the final word on the subject. The idea is simple. This union is sealed by God, so no human being has the authority to break it apart.
So, we've got the two main pillars, right? A male-female union and a lifelong bond. But how does all of that land in the modern world? Well, this is where things get really interesting. This is where the doctrine meets dissent.
One of the biggest modern debates, you guessed it, is about divorce. The argument against the whole indissoluble idea often points to what's called the exception clause in Matthew's Gospel. It seems to allow for divorce in a case of unchastity, but the Church's rebuttal focuses on the original Greek word used there, porneia. The argument is that this word doesn't mean adultery within a valid marriage, but rather an illicit or invalid union to begin with, something like incest. Proponents of this view also point out that the disciples were shocked when they heard this teaching, suggesting they understood it to be incredibly strict, with no real loopholes.
And of course, the other major debate is around discrimination. The argument, which you've probably heard, is that limiting marriage to just a man and a woman is unjust and denies people the right to marry who they love. The Church's rebuttal, though, isn't really about feelings or who you love. It goes back to that core definition of what marriage is. They argued that marriage is a unique institution that's fundamentally ordered toward procreation, which makes it distinct from other forms of romantic love. The key point from their perspective is that the definition is based on nature, not on prejudice. So when you ask why the Church defends this definition so fiercely, it gives a few key reasons.
First, it frames the teaching as an act of love, meant to guide people toward what it believes is their true good. Then, there's the argument that upholding this definition is for the common good of society. A big part of that is the belief that it protects the right of every child to be raised by their mother and father. And then the bottom line for them is this: they insist they simply don't have the authority to change an institution they believe was established by God Himself.
So, when you pull it all together, this is the picture that emerges. The Catholic teaching on marriage is that it's a sacred, permanent covenant between a man and a woman. It's understood to be a mirror of divine love, with rules that are considered timeless, no matter how much the world around it changes. And that really brings us back to where we started, leaving us with this one big question to chew on. When ancient definitions clash head-on with modern values, who ultimately gets to decide what a word like marriage truly means?